The room was quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, like everyone inside knows something big is about to happen. Jamie Dornan sat across from the interviewer, hands clasped, gaze steady yet distant. He'd done hundreds of interviews in his career, but this one was different. There was no script, no rehearsed smile. Just truth waiting to surface. The interviewer leaned in gently. You and Dakota shared something very unique, on screen and off. People have always wondered if those feelings ever crossed into real life. Jamie smiled faintly, his lips trembling just enough to give him away. For a few seconds, he didn't speak. He just looked down, sighed softly, and then said the words no one expected to hear. My feelings for Dakota were real, but... The interviewer froze. So did the room. It was the sentence fans had been waiting for, and yet, somehow, it carried more pain than satisfaction. He paused again, visibly wrestling with what came next. It's difficult, he finally said. When you work that closely with someone, when you share something so intimate, so vulnerable, it's impossible not to feel something. For a decade, people had speculated about the connection between Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson. Their chemistry in 50 Shades of Grey wasn't just convincing, it was electric, raw, and real. Too real. Interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, even red carpet moments all seemed to hint at something deeper than friendship. But both actors always brushed it off. Dakota would laugh and say, "Jamie's like my brother." Jamie would joke, "We know too much about each other to ever date." And yet, fans never believed them. The looks, the smiles, the unspoken comfort between them, it felt like something more. Now, finally, Jamie wasn't denying it. He leaned back in his chair, as though the confession had lifted something off his chest. You spend years working together, sharing parts of yourself that you don't share with anyone else, he continued. There's a trust there, an emotional closeness. And yes, those feelings were real. His voice softened, carrying the weight of years of rumors and restraint. But that doesn't mean they were meant to go anywhere. There's a line, and we both knew we had to respect it. The interviewer nodded, giving him space to breathe. Was that difficult? They asked. Jamie smiled again, this time with a touch of melancholy. Of course it was, he admitted. Dakota's one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. She has this ability to make you feel completely safe, even in the most uncomfortable situations. We went through something so unique together. And that kind of bond doesn't just disappear. He looked down for a moment, his fingers tightening. But real life is different from what people see on screen. I had someone waiting for me at home, someone who believed in me long before the fame, before the cameras. And I could never betray that. He didn't need to say Amelia's name. Everyone knew. For years, Amelia Warner had been the quiet strength behind Jamie Dornan's life. A musician, a mother, a partner who had weathered the storms of gossip with unwavering grace. Every time the tabloids printed stories linking Jamie to Dakota, Amelia said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence spoke of trust. Jamie's eyes softened as he talked about that balance. I think people forget that actors are human. We play these intense, emotional roles, and sometimes the audience wants to believe the feelings are real because they felt them too. But what Dakota and I shared was built on respect, not romance. Still, the word, but, hung in the air, haunting, unresolved. Because even if there was no forbidden love, there was something. A connection so deep that it blurred the line between fiction and truth. Jamie didn't deny it, he honored it. When I say my feelings were real, he explained, I mean that every emotion you saw on screen came from a genuine place. You can't fake that kind of connection. But at the same time, part of being an actor, part of being a man, is knowing how to separate what's real from what belongs to the story. The interviewer looked stunned. So, was it love? Jamie hesitated, then smiled sadly. It was something close to it. Maybe the kind of love that exists only between two people who understand each other completely, but know they can never cross that line. And with that, he stopped talking. No more explanations, no more denial. Just truth, raw, unpolished, and heartbreakingly human. The camera zoomed in as he looked away, lost in thought. It wasn't scandal. It wasn't gossip. It was closure. But what Jamie said next, the rest of that unfinished sentence, would take the internet by storm. When the interview aired, the world froze. For years, Jamie Dornan had danced around the rumors, smiling, deflecting, politely refusing to feed the fire. But this time, he'd given fans what they had always wanted: confirmation that his feelings for Dakota Johnson were real. And yet, that haunting word, but, echoed louder than anything else. Within hours, the clip went viral. Fans flooded social media with reactions ranging from heartbreak to awe. One tweet read, "He finally said it. He loved her in his own way." Another, "That, but, broke me more than any movie scene ever could." But what few people knew was that Jamie's confession wasn't spontaneous. It was the result of years of reflection, guilt, and a quiet understanding between two people who had once shared something extraordinary. After the interview, sources revealed that Jamie had sent Dakota a short text before it aired. It read simply, "You'll probably see this soon. I meant every word, and I hope it doesn't cause you pain." Her reply came later that night, "It's okay, Jamie. The truth doesn't hurt, silence does." That exchange said everything. Behind the cameras, Dakota had already heard the confession, not the words themselves, but the emotion behind them. She had lived it, felt it, and carried it quietly for years. What they shared wasn't romance in the traditional sense. It was emotional intimacy, a rare connection forged through vulnerability and trust. In a later magazine feature, Dakota would touch on it indirectly. When asked about her bond with Jamie, she said, "We went through something that changed us both. You can't spend that much time bearing your soul with someone and not feel something real. But life is complicated." Her words mirrored his. The world wanted a scandal, a secret affair, a forbidden love story. But what existed between Jamie and Dakota was far more human, and far more heartbreaking. Jamie had once described acting as emotional honesty without consequence. But in his case, the consequences were real. Playing Christian Grey had blurred his boundaries in ways he hadn't anticipated. "It was never about lust," he told a close friend. "It was about connection. We built something honest. But when the cameras stopped, we had to let it go." That letting go, however, wasn't simple. For months after the final 50 Shades film wrapped, they struggled to find normalcy. Dakota threw herself into new projects. Jamie focused on his family. But the silence between them spoke volumes. There was no falling out, no bitterness, just a quiet ache that comes when two people know their chapter has ended. In a later interview promoting Belfast, Jamie was asked if he missed Dakota. He smiled softly and said, "Of course. You don't spend that much time with someone without missing them. But I'm proud of her, of everything she's doing. She's one of the best humans I know." It was subtle, but the warmth in his voice said what words could not. Meanwhile, Amelia Warner, his wife, reportedly watched the entire interview without anger. A close friend of the family later said, "Amelia knows Jamie's heart. She understands the difference between on-screen emotion and real life. What hurts him doesn't threaten her." That quiet strength was one of the reasons Jamie spoke so openly. He knew he could finally tell his truth without hurting the people he loved. Weeks after the interview, Jamie and Dakota briefly reunited at a film festival in London. Cameras caught the moment they saw each other, a simple smile, a long embrace, and then laughter. There was no tension, no awkwardness. Just gratitude. Witnesses described it as beautifully bittersweet. One fan wrote online, "It wasn't love lost, it was love transformed." Later, when asked in a separate interview if he regretted saying what he did, Jamie paused, thoughtful. "No," he said finally. "Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting you felt something and still choosing to do the right thing. I'll always be grateful for what Dakota and I shared. But some feelings belong to the past. You can love someone deeply, and still know they're not yours." Those words hit like poetry, honest, aching, mature. Because the truth behind his confession was never about forbidden romance. It was about acceptance. About the courage to acknowledge something real without destroying the life built around it. Jamie ended his interview with a faint smile. The "but" in that sentence, he said, wasn't about regret. It was about respect, for her, for myself, for the people we love. Sometimes, love doesn't need to be acted on to be real. It just needs to be felt. And that's what made his confession so powerful. It wasn't a scandal. It was a love story told in honesty, restraint, and quiet heartbreak. In the end, Jamie Dornan didn't just confess his feelings. He reminded the world that real love isn't always about possession. Sometimes, it's about knowing when to let go.